Hello everybody again, this is Minicoder with Basic Programming 101, Tutorial 2. So if you remember last time, if you've been following the series, we talked about what object orientation is. It's basically a set of design patterns that structure your code in a particular way. It kind of deviates away from procedural programming, which is where it was really for the most part, one long sheet of paper, unless you were importing stuff. If you're used to that kind of programming, this sections everything off into what's known as objects or classes. Most of the time, those are synonymous. There are situations where they're not, but we're not going to talk about that quite yet. What you see on the screen is where we left off. We were doing some pseudocode, which is writing code in more of an English style than writing it in a programming style. We defined an animal, and we defined a dog, and we made them actually do something. The dog and the animal both yelled and ran. The difference is animal does not actually define any particular type of animal, so it could be randomized, it could be anything at all that's of type animal. In this case, this is a more concrete, whereas this is what's known as abstract. It's an abstract class, actually, or an abstract object, whereas the dog is a specific or concrete class or object. I also mentioned that each one of these has similar pieces to it. They all have some kind of functionality that is the same. A dog can yell, it's barking, but it can yell, and so can many other animals yell. A cat can meow, but it still can be considered yelling. We could change this to talk to be a little more generic. Usually you try to make things, when you're in the abstract class up here, more generic. So actually, now that I think about it, talk would probably have made more sense here. And obviously most animals can run, they can walk, and they can attack their prey. So what does this all mean? What this means is, with object orientation, since each one of these technically is probably going to be a different file, you may see some similarities that you might be able to move out into a generic or abstract class, and then reference it in the more concrete class. So let's get rid of this for a minute. We'll get rid of this, and we will get rid of this. Okay, now we will consider this animal class or object to be our abstract object. So this is the animal abstract, or actually let's say generic class. Okay, and then the dog will be our specific class, just to make it a little more common words. Now, what we can then do is what's called inheriting. So we can inherit from the animal class, which means that we take ownership of anything that's inside of that class. So now we're going to do inherits, right? This dog specific class inherits from animal. Okay? Now, with that being specified, we can do dog, or actually let's be polite about it, please dog yell. Okay, now when we when we tell the program to yell, the compiler, or the interpreter, which is what actually takes the code and compiles it down to what the computer understands, will look at dog and say, oh, well, I don't see anything that gives me the ability to yell. Let me look in animal, since it inherits from that. And then it's going to go through down the verbiage here, which will be called properties down the line. And and this was changed to talk, so we would go down here and say, oh, okay, the animal can talk, so the dog can talk. And that's the basics of object orientation and inheritance. In a nutshell, when you're doing English, writing it in an English fashion. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to now start making these properties instead of just verbiage. Usually, whether it's a C# class, Java class, regardless, there's usually the first word, I guess would be of the sentence for a property. It tells you who can access it. So there's either public, private, and there's a few other ones, but let's just go with those two for now. So we do public, and then we'll do property. Okay, and this is still English. This is not syntactical, so we're not going by syntax quite yet. So public property talk. Most of the time, a public property, you would make it a capital. So we'll get rid of this, and we'll make it a little more specific. Now, what we can do is you can tell it get and set. Okay. And let me get rid of the semicolon for now so I don't confuse people. So when you tell it animal has a public property of talk, and you can get or set it, that means that you can set it to something and you can get it. So now what we can do in dog is, instead of defining the property, we can make a method, but I'm not going to do method yet. I'm just going to stick with English for now. You can do public, or I'm sorry, not public. You can just do talk is equal to bark, and that's it. And when you say please dog talk, it's going to then spit out the string bark, or the value bark. Let's just say value. Let's forget about quotes for now. Okay, and let's say that you now make a class called cat. Right? We make a class called cat. Right? Cat. Then this would be meow. Meow. Right? Meow. And then when you called it outside of the class, please cat talk, it's going to, in fact, we'll just do this so it doesn't equal, so it will spit out meow. Okay, so that's how that works. Usually this would be something like writing out to either the user or the console, or if you're used to a command prompt, this would spit out in the command prompt when you tell it to talk. Usually what will happen here is the please cat. So you could look at the please cat as what's known as instantiation, which means you create the object, and then you tell it, okay, so what do I want you to do? I want you to talk. And then what the compiler will do is, okay, I created a new cat, which is instantiation. Then I'm asking that object that was just created to talk. And then it goes into the class, okay, I see cat, and there's no property called talk, but if I go to animal, there is a property called talk. We can set it, and it was set to meow, and then it'll spit out meow. So that's a whole bunch of verbiage there, but just know that when you inherit a abstract object with a concrete object, or I'm sorry, if you inherit from a abstract object, you now inherit all of the properties of that abstract class, assuming it's public. But we'll get into public and private later. Then comes something called a method. Now, people sometimes argue between a method and a function. This day and age, they're basically the same unless you're in certain languages like VB, which still has the concept of a subroutine. But we're not going to get into that. Just consider, if I say function and method, they are synonymous. I'm at 9 minutes and 39 seconds here, so I'm trying to keep these to 10 minutes at a time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to introduce the basic syntax of a method, and then we'll probably start going into the Visual Studio in the next tutorial. So whenever you're going to make a method, the method will do some kind of functionality. You don't want to make it large. It should do something and something well, is what a professor of mine used to tell me, is a method should do nothing but one thing and do it well. So we'll make it public again so that anything that calls it can access it. We will make it void, and void means that it's not going to return anything. So we don't expect to get anything from it. And then we'll say, I don't know, speak, okay? And then that will return. So we want to do the word return, right? So return means I'm going to give back whoever called me this. Oh, I'm sorry. We can't do that because we did a void. Let's change this void to a string. So we're going to return a string, which anything like this is a string. This would be a string. This is in the context of what we're talking about. We'll go through primitives and what they are and stuff like that in a later video. But just trust me that a string is anything that's within two quotes like that. So this is a string. Okay, that's a string. So we tell public string we want to call speak. So whenever somebody calls speak, we return whatever that is. So in this case, we're going to return meow. So we're going to return this string meow, and then there's this funny little semicolon here. In C# language and many other languages, especially object-oriented ones, there's this concept of a breaking statement. And what this semicolon does is it tells the compiler, I am done with this statement. Okay, this is, I know people call if statements, else statements, while loop statements. This is still a statement. You are stating that you want the compiler or the program to do something. So that makes it a statement. At the end of any statement, except for certain circumstances, but for now any circumstance, you would use a semicolon. So we're saying return the string meow and stop. These two curly braces right here, the open and close, tells the compiler, hey, I'm making this public method. I want it to do return a string, and this is underneath. This is where it starts, and underneath this is where it ends. Okay, and these parentheses around here, if you want the calling thing to pass in some kind of information to determine what you're going to do here, those are called parameters, and you would put them inside here. In our case, forget about parameters for right now. We're just saying the open and close parentheses means to C#'s compiler, this is a method, and many other languages. So now, instead of this, what we can do is cat.meow. So you would do the same exact thing that you did up here with the, or I'm sorry, God, man, I am not doing good today. Speak. Okay? And what this would do is this would now print out meow. And that's it. We'll get into variables and stuff like that later. I think what we're probably going to do, like I said, this is going way over what I'm trying to keep them at. This is at 14 minutes as I speak now. So next time we're going to pull into the Visual Studio, and we will start taking this stuff and converting it into the actual C# language and start understanding what an abstract class is, what these properties mean, and what a method is purposed for. Alright, so for now, thank you very much for listening. Again, thumbs up or thumbs down, and what you liked or didn't like is always appreciated. I want to make these as good and efficient as possible. So if anybody's got any recommendations, please feel free. And if you like this video and you want to see more or hear more in this case, please feel free to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great weekend.